I was only singing softly in my room when the door burst open, and he charged in. I thought I'd only have bruises, but it turns out I had something else. Evidence. He thought he controlled both the house and his reputation. He had no idea who was recording. The intercom's red light blinked steadily in the hallway, capturing every word, every sound of his rage. He'd installed it himself to monitor noise violations in his perfect campaign household. Now his own surveillance system would become his downfall. My name is Lila Hart, and at 29, I never thought I'd be back in my mother's house, tiptoeing around like a teenager afraid to wake her parents. But here I was, unpacking boxes in my childhood bedroom. The lease on my apartment expired and my options temporarily limited. Remember, Lila, Gerald has very specific expectations about noise levels, Mom said, hovering in my doorway. She'd been repeating variations of this warning since I'd moved in 3 days ago. He's under a lot of stress with the campaign. Gerald Pike, my stepfather of 2 years, was running for Westbrook City Council. As neighborhood association president, he'd built his platform on community standards and family values. The irony wasn't lost on me as I watched him tape a quiet hours 8 p.m., 8 a.m. sign on my bedroom door. I work night shifts at the children's hospital, I reminded him. I'm literally not here during your quiet hours. And when you are here, you'll respect them, he said, straightening his campaign button on his polo shirt. The walls are thin. The neighbors talk. Image matters. I'd taken the coordinator position at Northline Children's Pavilion specifically for the night shifts, better pay, and it allowed me to pursue my real passion. 3 nights a week, I sang at the Copper Rail, a small venue downtown that showcased local talent. Music had always been my escape, my truth. Gerald saw it as noise. The microaggressions started immediately. He'd slam the dishwasher lid if I hummed while making coffee. The hallway lights would snap off at exactly 10:01 p.m., leaving me to navigate in darkness if I came home late. He'd installed an intercom system throughout the house. For security, he claimed, but I noticed how he'd pause outside my door whenever I practiced scales. Your daughter's a professional. Mom had tried once, tentatively. She performs at... Bar singing isn't a profession, Denise, Gerald cut her off. It's a hobby that disturbs hardworking people. I started keeping a notebook, documenting each controlling behavior. Tuesday. Disconnected my practice amp while I was at work. Thursday. Removed my music stands from the living room because they cluttered the space. Saturday. Scheduled a campaign meeting in the house during my only free afternoon, forcing me to cancel rehearsal. Mom chose silence, her new marriage more important than her daughter's dignity. Just until the election, she whispered when I confronted her. Then things will calm down. But I knew better. Men like Gerald didn't calm down with power. They expanded. Every rule, every restriction was a test to see how much control he could exert. He quoted neighborhood ordinances like scripture, wielding bureaucracy as a weapon. Did you know, he said one evening, sliding a printout across the dinner table, that the residential noise ordinance includes any sound audible beyond property lines, even acoustic instruments? I stared at the highlighted passages. This is about lawnmowers and construction, not someone quietly practicing in their own room. The law doesn't differentiate. His smile was thin, satisfied. As a potential council member, I have to set an example. That night, I researched the intercom system he'd installed. The model had an auto-record function, constantly buffering the last hour of audio. Gerald probably didn't even know. He just wanted the intimidation factor of those speaker boxes in every room. I began to plan. The audition at the Copper Rail had gone better than expected. They offered me the Friday night slot, prime time, decent pay, and a chance to debut original material. I came home floating, my head full of melodies and possibilities. In my room, I pulled out my guitar and began working through the new arrangement. My voice stayed soft, barely above a whisper, mindful of Gerald's rules, even in my joy. The song was about finding your voice in silence, about truth emerging from suppression. I didn't realize how prophetic it would become. The knock was sharp, aggressive, Before I could respond, Gerald stood in my doorway, his face tight with controlled anger. Do you have any idea what time it is? I glanced at my phone. 7:47, 13 minutes before your quiet hours. The Riverside Community Association fundraiser is tomorrow. Donors are calling me about my family values platform, and I have my stepdaughter. He spat the word, caterwauling like she's in some dive bar. I was practicing, quietly, in my own room. This house represents the Pike family values, he said, stepping inside uninvited. Every sound that comes from it reflects on my campaign. Do you understand what's at stake? I understood perfectly. I'd seen his social media posts, carefully curated photos of family dinners I was conveniently working during, status updates about bringing harmony to our neighborhoods through respect and consideration. The hypocrisy made my stomach turn. Music brings communities together, I said, echoing his own campaign rhetoric. Isn't that what you posted yesterday? Something about supporting local arts? His jaw tightened. That's different. That's organized, approved, proper venues, not... He gestured dismissively at my guitar. This is my job. I perform professionally. You serve drinks while occasionally strumming, he interrupted. Don't inflate your hobbies into something they're not. After he left, I noticed my microphone was missing from its stand. I found it later in the garage, the cable neatly coiled beside it. A message. Your voice doesn't belong in this house. Mom avoided me the next morning, busying herself with campaign preparations. He's just stressed, she said without looking up from her phone. The polling numbers are close. He took my equipment. He moved it somewhere safe. Things have been going missing in the neighborhood. Didn't you see the association newsletter? Gerald had written it himself. A fear-mongering piece about property crime that didn't match any actual police reports. Create the problem, offer the solution. Politics 101. That evening, while they hosted donors in the living room, I sat in my room reviewing the intercom manual I'd downloaded. The system had impressive capabilities: motion activation, continuous loop recording, automatic backup to a connected device. Gerald had installed it to monitor and intimidate, but he'd handed me something far more powerful. The red recording light blinked steadily in the hallway unit, always watching, always listening. I wondered if Gerald remembered that it could record more than just noise violations. During my shift at the hospital that night, I couldn't stop thinking about the irony. Here, I coordinated care for children who'd lost their voices through illness, trauma, or circumstance. We worked so hard to help them find ways to express themselves again, yet in my own home, my stepfather was systematically silencing me, one confiscated cable at a time. I made a decision. If Gerald wanted to document everything, I'd give him something worth recording. The next morning, I placed my practice amp back in my room and retrieved my microphone from the garage. When Gerald discovered it, his face flushed red. I thought we had an understanding. We do, I said calmly. You believe in law and order, so I'm following the law. Quiet hours don't begin until 8. The vein in his temple throbbed. This is my house. Actually, it's Mom's house, and I pay rent. I held up the lease agreement we'd signed, which makes me a tenant with rights. He snatched the paper, scanning it with narrowed eyes. Finding nothing to weaponize, he tossed it back at me. You want to play games? Fine, but remember, after the election, when I'm on the city council, I'll have real power to define what's acceptable in this community. The threat hung between us like a blade. I smiled sweetly. Looking forward to it. It was past midnight when I got home from the Copper Rail. My set had gone well. The crowd responsive, tips generous. I'd even sold a few CDs of my original songs, in my room. I kept the lights low and my movements quiet, still humming the bridge of my closing number as I changed out of my performance clothes. I barely whispered the melody, more breath than voice. When my door slammed open, Gerald stood there in his robe, face twisted with rage. I said, no noise. Gerald, I have a donor breakfast at 7. Do you think anyone will write checks to a man who can't even control his own household? I stood, keeping my hands visible, my voice steady. I wasn't making noise. I was changing clothes. Don't lie to me! He stepped forward, and I instinctively moved back, maintaining distance. I heard you. Humming your bar songs like this house is some kind of… I live here, I said firmly. I pay rent. I have rights. That's when it happened. His hand shot out, catching me hard across the face. The force spun me sideways, and I stumbled, my hip striking the corner of my desk. Pain shot through my side as I caught myself against the wall. Rights? He hissed. You want to talk about rights? I stayed low, one hand pressed to my throbbing cheek, the other braced against the wall. My training from the hospital kicked in. De-escalation, creating space, protecting vital areas. I didn't fight back, didn't escalate. I just focused on getting out. I'm leaving the room, I said clearly, sliding along the wall toward the door. I'm going to the bathroom. He blocked the doorway for a moment, his chest heaving, then stepped aside with a sneer. Drama queen, just like your performances. In the hallway, my eyes caught the intercom unit. The red light blinked steadily. Recording, always recording. In my pain and shock, a cold clarity settled over me. He'd just handed me everything I needed. Mom appeared at their bedroom door, her face pale in the dim light. What's happening? Your daughter is disturbing the entire neighborhood, Gerald said, his voice already shifting to the measured tone he used in public. I tried to reason with her, but she got hysterical. I held my mother's gaze, my hand still pressed to my burning cheek. He hit me. She's being dramatic, Gerald cut in. Probably drunk from her bar job. She stumbled into her desk. Mom's eyes flickered between us, and I saw the moment she made her choice. Lila, maybe you should be more careful. These late nights. Yeah, I said quietly. I should be more careful. In the bathroom, I locked the door and examined my face in the mirror. A red mark bloomed across my left cheek, already beginning to swell. My hip throbbed where it had hit the desk. I took photos with my phone, time-stamped evidence in the harsh bathroom light. Then I sat on the closed toilet lid and opened my recording app, speaking in a low, clear voice. October 15th, 2:23 a.m., Gerald Pike physically assaulted me in my bedroom after I came home from work. He struck me across the face and pushed me into furniture. My mother, Denise Pike, witnessed the aftermath. Back in my room, I couldn't sleep. I pressed a bag of frozen peas to my face and opened my laptop. Researching. The intercom system's manual confirmed what I'd suspected. The hallway unit had been recording. The buffer saved the last hour of audio to any connected device. I'd need to access the main panel to retrieve it. At 6 a.m., I heard Gerald leave for his donor breakfast. I waited 10 more minutes, then slipped downstairs to the utility closet where he'd installed the intercom's main unit. My phone connected to its Wi-Fi signal. He'd never changed the default password from the manual. There it was. WAV file. Time-stamped 2:17 to 2:27 a.m. 10 minutes that changed everything. I saved it to 3 different cloud services, then emailed a copy to myself. At the urgent care clinic, I was methodical. I need to document injuries from a domestic incident. I told the intake nurse. She didn't ask questions, just guided me through the process. Photographs, measurements, detailed notes. The doctor was thorough, professional, writing everything down. Do you have somewhere safe to go? She asked gently. I'm working on it, I said. I had evidence. I had documentation. Now I needed a plan. The evidence folder on my laptop grew heavier each day. The wavy file from the intercom, 10 minutes of crystal-clear audio capturing Gerald's rage. The slap, my measured responses. Medical records from urgent care documenting a facial contusion and hip bruising. Time-stamped photos showing the progression from red mark to purple bruise. But I needed more. Gerald Pike wasn't just any abuser. He was a politician with connections and a public image to protect. One incident, however damning, might not be enough. I started with the neighbors. Mrs. Chen from 2 houses down had always been friendly. When I accidentally ran into her while walking her dog, she mentioned the disturbance without prompting. "I was worried about you, dear. That was quite the commotion at 2 a.m. These walls carry sound more than people think." "Did you hear anything specific?" I asked carefully. She paused, studying my face. I'd covered the bruise with makeup, but shadows remained. "I heard shouting, a man's voice, then a sharp sound, like—" She mimicked a slapping motion. "Are you all right? Would you be willing to write down what you heard, with the time and date?" Mrs. Chen nodded slowly. "I keep a journal. I actually wrote it down that night. The noise woke my husband. He has a heart condition. You see, we document disturbances for his doctor." The next breakthrough came from an unexpected source. While covering a shift at the hospital, I mentioned my housing situation to Dr. Rivera, explaining I might need to adjust my schedule. "Your stepfather is Gerald Pike?" She frowned. "He came here last month, demanding we change our visitor policies because some families were too loud in the children's ward. He threatened to make it a campaign issue if we didn't comply." "Did he put that in writing?" "Email, CC'd to half the board." She pulled it up on her computer. Gerald's entitled demands laid out in black and white, his signature line proudly displaying "Future Councilman." I photographed the email with permission, another piece showing his pattern of controlling behavior. Mom tried to corner me that evening, wringing her hands in the kitchen. "Gerald feels terrible about the misunderstanding. He wants to make amends." "Misunderstanding?" I kept my voice level. "He hit me." He was half asleep, startled. You know how he is about his rest before important meetings. "Mom, I have it recorded." Her face went white. "What?" "His intercom system. It caught everything." She sank into a chair. "Lila, please. The election is in 3 weeks. He's promised to donate to the music program at the community center if he wins. Isn't that what you want? More music in Westbrook?" "Not at this price." Gerald entered then. All false charm. "Lila, I wanted to apologize for the other night. Campaign stress, you understand. To make it up to you, I'll personally sponsor your next performance at the Copper Rail." "I don't need your sponsorship." His smile tightened. "Everyone needs sponsors. Lila, venues can be unpredictable, permits get reviewed, noise complaints get filed, but with the right support—" The threat was clear. I smiled back. "Thank you for clarifying your position. Would you mind putting that offer in writing, for tax purposes?" His eye twitched. I think verbal agreements work best for family. That night, I called Lena Vaughn, an attorney who'd performed at the Copper Rail during open mic nights. She listened to my story, reviewed my evidence, took notes. "The recording is admissible since it's his device in his home," she confirmed. "The medical documentation is solid. Mrs. Chen's testimony helps establish that this wasn't a private family matter, but a disturbance affecting the community. Ironic, given his platform." "What are my options?" "We can file for a temporary restraining order immediately, but given his political aspirations and public platform—" She leaned forward. "There might be another angle. Has he made any public statements about domestic violence, family safety?" I pulled up his campaign website. There it was, in bold letters. Gerald Pike, making Westbrook safe for every family. His statement on domestic violence was particularly sanctimonious, calling for zero tolerance and immediate consequences for abusers. Lena smiled. "Perfect. Now, let me make some calls. I think Noah Keene at the Westbrook Ledger would be very interested in this story." By the end of the week, I had a file that told a complete story. Audio evidence, medical records, witness statements, a pattern of controlling behavior, and a paper trail of threats disguised as political promises. Gerald had built his campaign on law and order, on protecting families and maintaining community standards. He was about to learn what those words really meant. The plan came together like a song, each element building on the last, creating something larger than its parts. Lena had filed the paperwork for a temporary restraining order. But we both knew that wasn't enough. Gerald Pike needed to face his community, not just a judge. "The town hall is perfect," Noah Keene said, sliding a press pass across the coffee shop table. "Live broadcast on Channel 7, streaming on the Ledger's website. Every voter in Westbrook watching their candidates." "He'll have me there," I said. "Mom already told me I'm expected to attend. Family solidarity." Noah, an investigative journalist who'd exposed 2 corrupt council members in the past 3 years, understood the game. "My audio engineer owes me a favor. The venue's AV system has backup channels, standard practice for live events. Everything that goes through those mics gets recorded, even when they're supposedly off." "Is that legal?" Lena nodded. "It's a public event in a public venue. No expectation of privacy, and since they'll post notices about recording for broadcast purposes," she smiled, "completely admissible." The Maple Run Community Center bustled with pre-event energy when we arrived. Campaign volunteers arranged chairs while the tech crew tested microphones. I spotted the audio engineer Noah had mentioned, a woman with purple hair who gave me the slightest nod. "Lila!" Mom rushed over, her smile brittle. "You look nice. Gerald wants us sitting in the front row, unified family image." "Of course," I smoothed my dress, chosen specifically to hide the small digital recorder in my pocket, backup for my backup. Gerald worked the room like a professional, shaking hands and promising better noise ordinances, stricter property standards, more family-friendly policies. His campaign manager had coached him well. Every gesture calculated, every word focused, grouped. "Remember," he muttered as he passed me, "you're here to smile and support. Nothing else." The debate began at 7 sharp. Gerald and his opponent, Maria Santos, took their positions at podiums while the moderator introduced the evening's topics: public safety, community development, and, I almost smiled, family values. During the first commercial break, we were ushered to a waiting room backstage. Gerald immediately cornered me while Mom fetched water. "You've been busy," he said quietly. "Lena Vaughn? Really? That ambulance chaser who plays guitar on weekends?" "She's a good attorney." "She's nothing. Just like that restraining order you're trying to file. You think anyone will believe you over me? I've served this community for 15 years. I kept my expression neutral, aware of the mic pack clipped to his lapel. The audio engineer had explained. Those packs stayed hot even during breaks, feeding to the backup recording system. "I have evidence, Gerald." He laughed. "You have a recording from my own security system? The one I installed to protect my family? That'll play well in court." He leaned closer. "Drop this now, or I'll make sure every venue in this city knows your trouble. Your little singing career will disappear faster than—" "5 minutes," the stage manager's voice interrupted. "Back to places." Gerald straightened his tie, his politician's smile sliding back into place. But I'd seen the tell, that nervous adjustment of his collar when he realized he'd said too much. The second half of the debate focused on family values. Gerald waxed poetic about protecting families, supporting victims of domestic violence, creating safe spaces for everyone in Westbrook. "Mr. Pike?" the moderator asked. "Your opponent has questioned whether your personal conduct matches your public positions. How do you respond?" "My record speaks for itself," Gerald said smoothly. "I've always stood for law and order, for protecting the vulnerable in our community. Ask anyone who knows me. I'm committed to safety and justice." In the waiting room afterward, with the mic supposedly dead and the cameras off, Gerald's mask slipped completely. "You think you're clever?" He grabbed my arm, not hard enough to bruise but firm enough to control. "That stunt with the lawyer? Filing complaints? You have no idea who you're dealing with." "Let go of me!" "You're going to withdraw that restraining order. Tonight, or I'll—" "You'll what?" I kept my voice calm, clear. "Hit me again? Like you did in my room at 2:23 a.m. on October 15th? His face went red. "You little—" He raised his hand, caught himself, lowered it. "That was nothing. You want to see something? Keep pushing." The purple-haired engineer appeared in the doorway. "Oh, sorry, just need to collect the mic packs." Gerald released my arm, his political smile snapping back. "Of course, great job tonight." As she unclipped his microphone, she winked at me. Everything was in place. The TRO papers were filed. The backup channel had captured every word of his threats. Noah had his story ready. All we needed now was the main event. The community center buzzed with post-debate energy. Supporters from both campaigns mingled in the main hall while Channel 7 conducted exit interviews. Gerald worked the crowd masterfully, his politician's smile never wavering as he shook hands and made promises. "Great debate, Mr. Pike," someone called out. "Thank you. Remember, safety and standards. That's what I'm about." I stayed in the background with Mom, playing my role as the supportive stepdaughter. The original memory card from the intercom system sat in my pocket like a loaded weapon. Lena had advised me to keep it close. Chain of custody mattered in court. The purple-haired audio engineer, whose name I'd learned was Riley, gave Noah a subtle thumbs up. The backup channel had captured everything in the waiting room, but we needed more. We needed Gerald to expose himself publicly, irrevocably. It happened during the meet and greet. A reporter asked about his family values platform, and Gerald launched into his practice speech, gesturing to where Mom and I stood. Family is everything to me. Creating a safe, harmonious home environment. That's the foundation of a strong community. My wife and stepdaughter can attest to the peaceful household we maintain. Actually, I stepped forward, my voice carrying across the room. I'd like to address that. The crowd turned, cameras swiveled. Gerald's smile froze. "Lila," he said warmly, though his eyes promised retribution. "This isn't the time." "When is the time, Gerald? When you're on the city council? When you have real power to silence people?" Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Noah moved closer with his recorder. "I don't know what," Gerald started. "October 15th, 2:23 a.m., I said clearly. "You entered my room and struck me because you heard me humming. You left bruises that I had documented at urgent care." I pulled out the medical report, holding it up. "This is the peaceful household you maintain." "She's lying," Gerald's composure cracked. "This is a political hit job." "I have audio, Gerald, from your own intercom system, the one you installed to monitor noise violations." His face went from red to white. Behind him, his campaign manager frantically whispered in his ear. "You're twisting things," he said, but his voice had lost its authority. "That was a family matter, a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding that left bruises, that woke the neighbors. Mrs. Chen from 2 houses down heard everything. She's willing to testify." The crowd pressed closer. Channel 7's camera operator moved for a better angle. "You want to talk about it here?" Gerald snarled, forgetting his mic was still live. "Fine. You came home drunk from your bar job, making noise, disturbing the entire neighborhood." "I was changing clothes, quietly. You hit me because I hummed." "You deliberately provoked." "So you admit you hit me?" The room went silent except for the hum of cameras. Gerald realized his mistake immediately. That's not, you're taking it out of context." Riley appeared at the AV board, her fingers dancing across the controls. Suddenly, Gerald's voice boomed through the speakers. Not from tonight, but from the waiting room recording. "You think you're clever? That stunt with the lawyer? Filing complaints? You have no idea who you're dealing with." Then my voice, calm and clear, "Let go of me. You're going to withdraw that restraining order, tonight, or I'll—" "You'll what? Hit me again, like you did in my room at 2:23 a.m. on October 15th? Riley let it play just long enough for Gerald's response. "That was nothing. You want to see something? Keep pushing." The room erupted. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. Gerald's supporters began backing away, his campaign staff huddling in damage control mode. That's edited, taken out of context." Gerald grabbed for the nearest microphone. "This is a setup." I reached into my pocket and pulled out the memory card. "This is the original file from your intercom system. Gerald, unedited, Time-stamped. I'm providing it to the police tonight, along with my medical records and witness statements. 2 uniformed officers had appeared at the back of the room. Lena's timing, perfect as always. "Mr. Pike," one said, "we need to speak with you about an assault complaint." The cameras captured everything. Gerald's shock, his campaign manager's frantic phone calls, Mom's tears, and my steady stance in the center of it all. "You're ruining everything," Gerald shouted, abandoning all pretense. "My campaign, my reputation." "No," I said firmly. "You ruined it the moment you raised your hand to me. I'm just making sure everyone knows who you really are." As the officers led him away for questioning, I felt the weight of the memory card in my hand. Evidence, truth, my voice, finally heard. The hot mic had done its job perfectly. The dominoes fell faster than anyone expected. Within an hour, Pike Exposed was trending across Westbrook social media. Noah's article on the Ledger's website crashed their servers from traffic. Channel 7 ran the footage on a loop, their legal analyst breaking down the implications. By morning, Gerald's carefully constructed world had imploded. The campaign headquarters, once bustling with volunteers, stood empty except for a few staffers boxing up materials. His campaign manager released a terse statement about reassessing their position, which everyone understood meant complete withdrawal. The executive committee held an emergency meeting, Lena informed me over coffee. They've frozen all campaign funds pending investigation. 3 major donors have already demanded refunds. The restraining order was granted without contest. Gerald's lawyer didn't even show up to argue against it. More importantly, the district attorney's office had opened a formal investigation based on the evidence we'd provided. Mom found me packing my things that afternoon. Her face was blotchy from crying, but something had shifted in her posture. She looked clearer. "I keep replaying it," she said quietly. "All the warning signs I ignored. The way he'd criticize you, control everything. I told myself it was just his personality, his passion for order." "You were in love," I said, not unkindly. "I was afraid." She sat on my bed, watching me fold clothes, afraid of being alone again, of admitting I'd made another mistake. So I let him. Her voice cracked. "I let him hurt my daughter." "Mom!" "No, I need to say this. When he hit you, I knew, deep down, I knew it was wrong, but I chose my comfort over your safety, and I'll never forgive myself for that." We sat in silence for a moment before she spoke again. "I'm filing for divorce. My lawyer says with the restraining order and criminal charges, it should be straightforward." That evening, the Riverside Community Association held its own emergency meeting. The same neighbors who'd once complained about my noise now approached with apologies and support. Mrs. Chen hugged me tightly. "We should have spoken up sooner," she said. "We all saw how he treated you, but we didn't want to get involved in family business." The president of the association stood up. "I move to formally censure Gerald Pike and bar him from any leadership position within our organization." The vote was unanimous. Channel 7 requested an interview, but I declined. This wasn't about fame or revenge anymore. It was about accountability. Instead, I gave a statement through Lena. "Domestic violence thrives in silence and shadow. Gerald Pike used his position and reputation to control and abuse, believing his public image would protect him from consequences. I hope this encourages others to speak up, to seek help, and to know that no one, regardless of their standing, is above accountability." The copper rail, which had always been my sanctuary, became even more so. The owner, Marcus, offered me additional nights, and the crowds grew. But it wasn't about sympathy. People came for the music, for the authenticity of someone who'd found her voice. "You did it right," Riley told me after a set, her purple hair catching the stage lights. "Most people would have just leaked the audio anonymously, but you stood up there, in front of everyone, and owned your truth." "I had good help," I said, thinking of Lena, Noah, Riley, and even the officer who'd carefully documented the chain of evidence. The criminal case would take months to resolve, but the court of public opinion had already rendered its verdict. Gerald Pike, the man who'd campaigned on family values while terrorizing his own family, was finished in Westbrook politics. A week later, I received an unexpected call. Maria Santos, who'd won the council seat by the widest margin in city history, wanted to meet. "I'm establishing a task force on domestic violence prevention," she said. "Real action, not just campaign promises. Would you consider being an advocate? Your voice, your story, it could help others." I thought about all the people who'd messaged me privately, sharing their own stories of abuse they'd never reported, the ones who'd finally sought help after seeing someone stand up publicly. "Yes," I said, "I'd be honored." That night, I sang a new song at the Copper Rail. It was about finding strength in truth, about the power of evidence, about voices that refused to be silenced. The intercom system that had once monitored my every sound had become the instrument of my liberation. The red recording light that had watched me in fear now reminded me of my power. Some weapons, I'd learned, came in unexpected forms. Sometimes they came as tiny memory cards holding 10 minutes of truth. Sometimes justice sounded exactly like your own voice, finally free to sing. The Copper Rail was packed beyond capacity. Word had spread that tonight was special. Not just another performance, but a celebration of voice reclaimed. Marcus had to turn people away at the door, promising a second show next week. I stood backstage, tuning my guitar, when Mom appeared with a bouquet of lilies. "These were always your favorite," she said softly. "Even as a little girl, you'd pick them from the garden while singing." I remember. She touched my arm gently. "I'm proud of you, Lila, not just for standing up to him, but for how you did it, with dignity, with evidence, with truth." Riley's voice came through the monitor. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to our stage, Lila Hart." The applause was thunderous. I stepped into the spotlight, seeing familiar faces in the crowd. Lena raising a glass, Noah with his notebook closed for once, Mrs. Chen beaming from a front table, even some of the hospital staff who'd switched shifts to be here. "Thank you all for coming," I said into the microphone. 6 months ago, I was told my voice was too loud, too disruptive, too much. Tonight, I want to share what I learned about the power of sound, not just in music, but in truth. I began with a cover, something soft and familiar to warm up the room, but when I moved to my original pieces, the atmosphere shifted. These weren't just songs anymore, they were testimonies. The new piece, Red Light Lullaby, told the story without naming names, about surveillance becoming salvation, about control becoming evidence, about the very tools of oppression becoming instruments of freedom. The chorus was simple but powerful. "You built these walls to keep me quiet, installed your eyes in every room, but you forgot that when you're watching, the red light sees you too." Halfway through the set, I noticed him in the back corner, Gerald, out on bail, stripped of his position, his reputation in ruins. He stood there, arms crossed, trying to intimidate even now. I didn't miss a note. Instead, I looked directly at him as I introduced the next song. "This one's about accountability," I said. "About how the truth always finds its way to the surface, no matter how deep you try to bury it." Security moved toward him, but he was already leaving, shoulders slumped in defeat. The man who'd once commanded rooms could barely make eye contact now. The community had spoken, and he was no longer welcome in the spaces he'd once controlled. Maria Santos took the stage briefly during my break. "The Domestic Violence Prevention Task Force met for the first time yesterday," she announced. "Thanks to Lila's courage and the evidence she provided, we're implementing new policies, including mandatory recording systems in all city-funded shelters, not for surveillance, but for protection, so no one's truth can be silenced or denied." The crowd erupted again. I felt tears prick my eyes as I returned to the stage. "I used to think strength meant staying quiet," I said. "Keeping the peace, not making waves. But I learned that real strength is in speaking truth, even when your voice shakes, especially when your voice shakes. I played for another hour, each song a piece of my journey from silence to sound. The tip's jar overflowed, people stuffing in bills with notes of encouragement, sharing their own stories, thanking me for showing them it was possible to reclaim their voices too. As I played my final song, I thought about the intercom system still installed in Mom's house. She'd wanted to remove it, but I'd asked her to leave it, not as a reminder of fear, but of transformation. Sometimes our greatest weapons come from the most unexpected sources. The red recording light that had once monitored my every breath had become my witness, my guardian, my proof. Gerald Pike had installed it to control me, never imagining it would be his undoing. He'd created the perfect system to catch a criminal. He just never thought the criminal would be him. The last note rang out across the packed room. I stood there in the spotlight, no longer afraid of being seen, no longer ashamed of being heard. "Thank you, Westbrook," I said, "for listening, for believing, for reminding me that our voices are our power, and no one, no matter who they are or what position they hold, has the right to silence them." The standing ovation lasted 5 full minutes, but the sweetest sound of all was my own voice, finally free, filling every corner of the room without apology. The red light had stopped blinking, but my voice would never stop singing. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Please share in the comments below so we can connect. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories of courage and justice. What did you think about Lila's journey? Share your thoughts. I read every comment and love hearing from you all.